I don't care, right? Because it's my belief. That's what
Right.
I'm going to speak out what I'm looking
Right.
for.
Welcome to the show, Judy Thureson. I'm so honored and so excited to have you here today.
My pleasure. I've been waiting for this. So good.
Yay. So, as we jump into this, I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are so the audience can get to know you.
Hmm. Gosh, that's a loaded question. How much time do we have?
Well, they're going to get to know you during the interview. So,
Yes.
just what feels right now? What do you want to start with?
Well, it feels right. This is the question I never know how to answer because when people ask, what do you do exactly? And it's really whatever lights me up and whatever I love to do. I made a decision a few years ago that I'm only going to say yes to things that really light up my soul. And so I've kind of become dubbed the fairy godmother. So I have my little wand right here, you see.
Nice. Ooh, I'm
uh,
sure we all want to know more about that.
yes. And one of my clients about 3 years ago, when we started working together, in the beginning of our journey, I always have people do a brain dump of, we'll set a timer, 5 minutes, share and write down anything that you want. No filter, no judgment, just write down anything that you want. And it can be as big or as little. And so we did that with her, and she put all the things listed on her paper. And in about 6 months, we have a year agreement. In about 6 months, everything on that list had come true. And she said, I don't know who you are, but you're like a fairy godmother. And she gifted me this wand. And
Oh,
so
really?
it's kind of stuck, this
Stuck.
little nickname. But I
Um,
love to see people's dreams come true. I love to co-create with people.
mm,
I love my clients deeply. Once they're in my field, I don't even like to call them clients. I mean, it's really a soul connection. And
right.
I work with people that I'm fully aligned with, that I'm inspired by, that I'm motivated by. Um, and I do things from grief and trauma work to business consulting to healing work to relationship coaching. So it's kind of whatever is present, whatever is needed, whatever is in front of me, is that's what we work with, and that's
Mm,
what we play with. And it's just really exciting, and I feel so blessed to do what I
mm.
do. And I host retreats all over the world, and I own a Pilates studio here in Scottsdale, Arizona. So
Oh
it's
my
a
gosh, I
whole.
forgot about that. Just
I
to add
write
that to
books,
the list.
I write books, I speak, and I host
Oh, look,
events.
I have it too.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, and it's just such a fun way to make use of my ADHD.
Well, everyone listening who has ADHD, you can fulfill dreams, you can follow through. Something that jumped out in what you said to me is the word co-create. You talked about co-creating with your clients, and we're obviously co-creating here. And honestly, everyone listening, we're co-creating with you because we're tapping
Right.
into your energy as well. Uh,
Mhm.
Say a little bit more about what that means to you, co-creation, because it might be the first time someone's heard that word.
Right. Well, I always say, two heads are better than one. So you come in, if you're a client of mine and you're coming in with an idea, a dream, a goal, I get to co-create with you where we meld our minds together to see, well, what is possible? And I am a very out of the box thinker. And so somebody might come in, set of ideas of, well, this is how it's always been done, and I can't see my way out of it.
Right.
And that's where my magic wand comes out and says, well, what are some other possibilities? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of this collaboration? Have you thought of this, creation that maybe hasn't ever been done before?
Right.
And
Right.
it's just really fun because my favorite thing is when we create something out of nothing,
Right.
right? Just an idea, a seed, and it germinates and it grows into something, and that is my most favorite thing.
And that's such an important that growing something out of nothing and creating from nothing is so important right now because the world is changing so much.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you noticed with in your own life and or in your work with your clients, have you noticed that there's been this more of a rapid pace, like a more of a oh my gosh, like I need to not necessarily reinvent myself, but I need to figure this out because things are moving so fast.
Absolutely. I have like chill bumps everywhere because especially with AI and different things, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? Just what's happening in the world and recession and whatever you want to call it. And
Right.
uh, as a creator, I come from a place of looking at what's possible and coming from my heart center and coming from spirit and source and authenticity. And so that, for me, in my opinion, will never go out of style. And there's
Right.
always good job security, right? Because I mean,
Right.
even for me, and I'm sure our audience and yourself, is when you read something or you see something, if it's authentic, you feel it, right?
Right.
We
Right.
all have.
It resonates with you or it doesn't.
Absolutely. And so people who are, so eloquent and they have it all, set, create something out of AI, like I can just spot that a mile away. And I think people like us who are coming from the grassroots level of just that authentic leadership, those are the people that are going to stand the test of time, in my opinion.
It's so interesting. I had another guest on the show who was a really had been in technology for a long time, and we were talking a lot about what's it going to look like, right, in the future. Like what did he imagine it was going to look like, and what were the positives and what were the potential negatives. And in that conversation, as I feel what you're saying, and I resonate with it so much, is this idea that there can be incredible value, right, in any technology, in anything new, and we're still human beings,
Right.
right? And so how do we integrate, or how do we potentially leverage a tool and still show up and be us, whatever that
Right.
looks like? And I think that I imagine you have found this with your clients. I know I have. When you focus on that, it actually relieves some of that stress and fear and overwhelm because we actually have the ability to make decisions for ourselves. We may not be able to control what's outside, but we can make decisions for ourselves. Have you noticed that as well with your clients, that there's a decreasing in that fear and that overwhelm and just kind of general stress when they go
Absolutely.
inward?
Absolutely. I mean, so twofold. My Pilates studio, right? There's a lot of studios popping up where you show up and there's a screen and you're working out with somebody who's talking to you from a screen.
Right,
And I think during the pandemic, that became even more popular because we
right.
needed that.
But wait a minute, you go to a studio to do that? Because doing it at home makes absolute sense to me.
There are studios where you are now working out with the video. There are many
Okay. Okay.
actually.
All right.
And and it's probably cost effective for them, less
Right.
overhead, yada yada. But there is nothing that will be substitute for this
Right.
energy transfer where you feel someone's energy in the room with you. And
Yeah.
so for our Pilates studio, like that is really something that we take pride in, is that when you show up, when you come, you're not just a person that gets checked off the list, but
Mm.
you are seen, you are felt, you are heard, you are connected to.
Right.
So in that space, I feel that. And then when it comes to my clients, as I level up and am co-creating with clients who are, really movers and shakers and leaders and entrepreneurs and doing big things in the world, there is, still that insecure part of me of like, can I do this? Can I serve them? Am I enough, right? Or
Right.
what can I bring them value? And that, performance anxiety or whatever. And what I've noticed is the more that I drop into me, heart center, groundedness, really, and I've been around the block a few times, so there's a lot of life experience that
Right.
really trumps any certification, education, anything that's out there. And as human beings, when we are able to create and connect with someone else because of what we've actually been through, that trumps any kind of anything that's out there. And I don't know if you find that to be true for you too.
No, and it's so true. And it actually was one of the driving forces in creating this podcast. So I really have noticed that there is a challenge with some people, of being able to communicate at that deep personal or deep human or deep soul, however you want to say it, but at that deeper level, right?
Yeah.
And and I've noticed also that it's a little scary for some people.
Yeah.
And I think I recently wrote an article on imposter syndrome, and I think that some of it comes from this feeling of like, ooh, if you really know who I am, are you going to accept me? Are you going
Yeah.
to like me? Am I going to be able to help you? Like you said, you know, whatever the what if. And my intention, one of my intentions with this podcast is, look, these deep conversations, they can feel good and they can inspire, and they can inspire ideas, they can inspire actions, they can inspire all of us to connect at a deeper level. So I'm with you on that. Obviously, when Judy and I met at a live event, and it was just by accident that we were next to each other. And it's so funny
Never by
after
accident.
never by accident. Well, you know, I both put accident in
Right,
quotes.
right.
It was meant to be. And as we learned more about each other, what we do in the world, but also our personal experiences, because both you and I, Judy, have lived a few years.
Yes, yes.
We have some life experience, but you know, being able to use isn't even the right word, but be able to just incorporate and integrate that life experience in all we do. It
Yeah,
just helps other people to realize
absolutely.
that even if they're facing something that's a challenge, grief, tragedy, all that, there
Mhm.
are opportunities to connect within and connect with others.
Absolutely. You know, I always say this is vulnerability. You're not just gonna learn it by reading a Brene Brown book.
It
Vul-
stays here, it stays in the brain.
And I love that you're doing this podcast. And I truly believe it's going to serve powerfully because vulnerability for me, it's a modeled experience. And as we
Absolutely.
see people modeling it, that is what's going to teach us and give us permission to go deeper, to have those soul
Yes.
conversations, right? And
Yeah.
you know, my husband laughs at me all the time because like this is just who I am. I don't know how to be any other way than to go deep right away.
Well,
Uh,
let me stop you for a second. Have you always
yes.
been that way?
You know, I remember there was a very conscious decision where I
Okay.
shifted that.
Okay.
And the answer is no, I wasn't. Actually, you know, I was born in a political family. So as you know, politicians, you know, you have to put your best foot forward. You only show what's acceptable to
Right.
show. You smile, you do, you know, the wave, all the stuff, but you're never showing what's truly happening
Mm.
inside, especially, you know,
Wow.
your family.
That's a
Um,
massive unlearning.
Oh, wow. I think I'm a little bit of a rebel. And
Okay.
so I'm like, I'm going to do the complete opposite and I'm going to put out all my dirty
Oh
laundry.
my.
So if I ever go into politics, which I will never, well, never say never, right? But
Right.
there's nothing that anyone there's no dirty laundry because I am
It's all out
the
there.
one that just puts it all out there, right? So to answer your question, no, I haven't always been this way. And my husband reminds me all the time, honey, people don't do that what you do. They're not that open. And sometimes it can be a little bit too much. Right?
Right.
People don't know what to
Right.
do with it because
Right.
they're not
Right. It's kind of like,
used to
ah,
it.
I've seen that
Yeah,
too. When I share something, it's like, oh, maybe that was a little bit too much for that person. You
right,
know?
right. And something that Brene Brown does say that I love, and she says, not everyone is entitled to your vulnerability.
Right.
So there is discernment. And I'm learning
Absolutely.
that, you know, of like
Yeah.
who, and I love that you and I met and we got deep right away. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking deep stuff
Deep,
like in
deep
our
stuff
first
within.
5 minutes.
Exactly. Oh, well, and we knew it. We recognized it in each other, I think.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up, and for anyone who doesn't know your book, and I'm going to show it again, this book, Beautiful Tragedy, which I think is such a powerful title, Judy.
Mhm.
And me having gone through my own, you know, my own experiences of different types of tragedies, the idea of holding beauty, right, and love and all of that in the same space
Mm.
as that tragedy is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So I'd love to, if you don't mind, I would love to ask you what inspired that book and share a little bit about your story. Because I know when I read that book that I could connect with the heart-wrenching feelings as well as the deep, deep love, and the love within you, for you and all of who you are, as well as your family and your son.
Gosh, you should have prepared me to bring some tissue here.
Oh, sorry.
Actually, no, I have some right here.
There you go.
Yeah, actually the name came to me in a dream. Before I even thought I was going to write a book, writing a book was not even on my radar.
Right.
And I was woken up from a dream and it just said, beautiful tragedy.
Mm.
I didn't know if it was a poem, a song, a book. It was just so compelling that I literally got out of my bed to write it down 3 in the morning and then went back to sleep and then forgot about it. And then, Jacob, my son Jacob, passed in June, on June 27th, 2019. Let me rewind a little bit. June 13th, Eric and I, my husband and I, were at my kitchen table and we're talking about this meditation program that I was going to birth into the world. And Eric's the producer director, and he was going to direct this 30-day mindfulness meditation program that I was going to launch. And we're sitting here at the dining room table, and I say to him, I'm a little apprehensive because anytime I try to do something like this for me, something bad happens to Jacob. And at this time, Jacob was 18, but from 16 to 18, we were struggling with, mental health, addiction, substance abuse, in and out of rehab, you name it. And it just came so fast.
Yeah.
And we were the family that, we went to church 3 times a week. We homeschooled. We did all the things. We moved to the suburbs. We tried to protect our kids the best that we could. And
So you did everything on that list that supposedly makes everything turn out just right.
Exactly. The opposite of everything that I up, right? And there was even judgment of like, well, I was so flabbergasted that this was happening to us. That no, this doesn't happen to our family. This happens to the people over there on that side of the street, right? And so it came so fast that it was just this whirlwind. I'm trying to figure out how to manage and handle and control, as a recovering control freak.
Attempt to control.
Attempt to control the perceived control, like everything was just so out of my hands. It was just happening so fast. And at this point, we were in a season of sobriety with Jacob. He just signed a record deal with Atlantic. He was this amazing, powerful creator, artist, musician. And so here I felt like I have this window to do what I wanted to do. To create. And Eric's like, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. We're doing this. So Eric goes off to work, and about an hour later, I get a phone call from his girlfriend, Jacob's girlfriend, that he was found unresponsive and he was being rushed to the emergency room. So little did I know, this very thing that I was ready to birth to the world ended up being the tools that I needed to just anchor me during this, tragedy, right? And Jacob ended up being in a coma for 2 weeks, from the 13th to the 27th. So it was 2 weeks. And now my husband is actually in the middle of filming a documentary called 2 Weeks Notice.
I saw that.
In Eric's mind, it's like, yeah, Jacob gave us 2 weeks, and as you know, in reading the book, miracles happened in those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I feel like there was beauty in that, right? If Jacob would have been found, passed, I don't know where I would be in a very different place. But because we had those 2 weeks, we were able to process, connect, grieve. One of the definitions of grief from the Grief Recovery Institute is when you're able to deliver, when you have undelivered communication of an emotional nature, that's what causes grief, right? When you think about it, when you have grief, it's like, oh, I wish I would have said this, I should have done this, and all the woulda, coulda. That's what causes that grief feeling. But as a grief recovery specialist, I had the tools to know I'm going to deliver all the communication before Jacob passes, whether he's conscious or not conscious, because it's not for them, it's for us. To clear.
That's so important. I want to underline that. It's not for them, it's for us.
It's for us.
Because it's for us to be able to live our lives and to do and be all that we're meant to be. Even after a tragedy.
Right. And so there was so much beauty in knowing that I was able to deliver all the communication. And even before Jacob passed, while as he was going through his challenges, that was my
Right.
commitment to him, is how can I love this kid unconditionally as he
Right.
is right now, not waiting for, well, when you do this, then
Right.
I'll love you this way, right? Like just this pure unconditional love, which was a lesson for me as a mom.
That's a big lesson.
A
I've
big
definitely, my children have invited me to learn that lesson in many, many ways. To recognize that someone is on their journey, and even as a mom, as a parent, we don't have control
no,
over their journey. And
no,
even when we do all the right things, like you said, and for anyone listening who is in deep in this right now, I just want to acknowledge Judy and I have done a lot of work. We have different scenarios and backgrounds. We've done a lot of work. We're not meaning to lighten the pain, to lighten the grief, the pain, the all of that, the fear, all of that. But just want to speak to, when something like this is happening, there is an opportunity for growth for
yeah,
all of us. And I think you illustrate that so beautifully in your book. And it's not that it's not painful, and it's not that it's not heart-wrenching, it's not that it's not sad. And I think about the journeys my kids have been on, as well as the sudden death of my mom. And I think, wow, I have learned so much about showing up and being present, having those deeper, more vulnerable conversations, being true to who I am,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so I just want to say that, because if anyone's in the midst of it, sometimes it can sound like, oh, like, where are those deep, overwhelming feelings? And I just want to say, you and I have done
yes.
some work. You've obviously, a lot of that work was in the book. Would this book be appropriate for someone who's in the midst, deep in the midst of some sort of tragedy?
Absolutely. I wrote it with that person in mind. I know that when you are in the midst of that tragedy, you have what we call grief brain, where your
Right.
attention span is, this much, and you don't even know which way is up. Taking a shower is like, oh, that's the win. I mean, I know when
Right,
I'm
right.
going through it, like if I can just get a shower in, that I feel human.
A
I feel
shower,
like
a glass of water, and maybe a little food. Right.
right, because when you're in the midst of it, I mean, those early days of that grief, I mean, it was painful just to breathe.
Right.
It was,
Right.
and you can't even imagine that you're ever going to get through that
Right.
feeling, because it just is so intense.
Yeah.
And so I don't sugarcoat it. I tell,
Right.
people when they're in the
I
midst
I
of.
I love that you in the book as well. I love
Mhm.
it.
Yeah,
It's very honest. I don't know if you know, and I don't know if my audience knows, that I used to do a ton of consulting work in a hospital on a palliative care team. So I was actually helping not only patients and patients' families, but also the physician and nursing team in how to create, for the team, for the staff, how to create and interact with someone who is facing something that was, a 28-year-old diagnosed stage 4 gastric cancer with two little tiny
oh,
babies, right? Like that kind of like, whoa.
mm,
So I've been in a room. I've been in many rooms when
yeah,
people are actively dying. I've been in many rooms when people are getting the news that they don't have the life ahead of them that they thought they were going to
yeah,
have. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. I mean, I
yeah,
was I was helping some of the physicians to know how to stay present, just to be present and be human in the
yeah,
space, because it's super uncomfortable. So
mhm,
um I love, coming from that perspective and reading your book. I love how honest and straight up you are
mhm,
about
mm,
the pain and the depth,
yeah,
as well as you share a little bit more about what you're actually providing for readers in the book, because you're not just telling your story, you're also providing incredible value for them on their journeys.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So in this meditation program that I was going to birth into the world ended up becoming this book. And so every morning in my meditation, I would ask Spirit, is what I call, to give me the word to help anchor me for the day, my mantra for the day. And I just would take notes down of what those words were. And those words actually became the chapter titles for the book. And so there's 40 chapters in the book. And like I said, with Grief Brain, you can only retain so much. So the chapters are like maybe 2-3 pages, and they're written in a way that a parent can read it and turn around and give it to their 15-year-old, and their 15-year-old won't get overwhelmed by a book. And one of the greatest compliments that I've gotten is when kids tell me, I hate reading books, and I sat down and I read your whole book, and they're so
Wow.
grateful. And this book has saved lives. I mean, I've had kids say I was ready to commit suicide, and after reading your book, I decided to stay. And so in the book, we have what we've outlined as what we call the give principle. And this was born out of this idea of especially, I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here, but just
It's
to
okay.
rewind,
Mhm.
when Jacob passed, of course, as a mom, I combed through all his social media, all his emails, text messages, trying to just get some answers back to that control. Like, I need to know.
Right, right.
And what I found was that he was fielding so many phone calls and messages, emails from kids all over the world who were struggling with depression and anxiety and substance abuse. And one girl had cystic fibrosis, and he was just encouraging people from all over the world and just being a light to them.
Wow.
And I just thought, wow, here's this 18-year-old kid giving and pouring
Right,
out so much, and he was young, and he was too young to know how to pour back into himself. I mean, this is the
right,
work that I do. This is the
right,
work that you do. You know how much work
right,
it takes to pour back in. We were just
right,
talking about that
right.
earlier, of protecting our energy. So here you have this kid who's doing that, and total empath, and
Right.
didn't have the tools to pour back into himself. And so the give principle came from that idea of, we want to pour out of our fullness, not our empty cup.
Right.
And so give is an acronym, and it stands for, G stands for grounding,
Mm. Got to
right?
start with that.
When we ground and we are present and just practicing that present moment awareness, there is no suffering there. Even when you're in the midst of it, really, when you think about it, when you are present to the moment, there is no suffering in that moment. So powerful.
It's really interesting that you say that, because some people might say, well, what does it mean to ground? And one of the things that I would do with family members when their loved one was in the hospital and very close to death, I would, and they didn't want to leave their side, right? You talk about this in your book too, but I would encourage them to go outside, and even at minimum, go outside, feel the sun on their face,
Mm.
feel the mist, feel the rain, and just breathe and close their eyes and feel into that moment
Mm.
for 30 seconds. I say you have 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And because in order for them to be able to be there for their loved one, they needed to ground themselves.
Mhm.
So I love that you start with that. And for
Yeah.
anyone listening, grounded, what is it that brings you back to yourself?
Yeah.
What allows you to be in that present moment?
Right.
It's different
And
for
for me, it's breath. It's just
breath.
breath. When we were in the ICU with Jacob, we had a list of things to watch out for, and he had to take certain amount of breaths per
Right.
minute. And it really showed me the value of, wow, every breath counts, like
Mm.
literally.
I have chills all up and down my body. That's such a powerful metaphor,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that lesson that he and his experience not only offered you, but everyone. It's like breath
Yeah.
does matter.
Breath.
And it's interesting too, and I want to hear the rest of the
Mhm, mhm.
the other steps, but you just made me think of my mom's death. And I don't want to get into the whole story, but she had a very minor stroke, very minor. She was able to move, she was able to walk, she was able to talk, and the medicine they gave her to help just to move that clot actually killed her. And now what they did against her wishes, because she had all the documents signed, but of course no one knew this was going to happen. They actually put her on life support and airlifted her somewhere else to just, I think they thought that they had made a mistake, honestly, and they were covering their butts. But all that to be said, that even though her body naturally, you know, died, they put her on life support, which was something she said she never ever wanted to be on. And there was a moment where I needed to let them know that they needed to take her off. And
Mm.
in that space of when they finally took her off and being with her, being present while the body, see, in my mind, she was already
Yeah.
somewhere else. Okay. I felt her somewhere else, but the body was still winding things up.
Mm.
She didn't have a breath. And I asked them, I'm like, well, how long? But her heart was beating
Wow.
really slowly. And so for me, I hear what you're saying about the breath, and then I also think about our heartbeat and that connection, right? So without the breath, for her, her heart was able to beat. I don't remember right now, but it was strangely something like 15 minutes. I might be
Wow.
making this up. So all you physicians out there, just recognize that I was in the throes of grief. I might not remember exactly, but it was much longer than I expected. I was like,
Wow.
how is this happening? But it was the body. But you make me think of those things that we take for granted,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And being able to
Absolutely.
connect with them, like you're saying, connect, to be able to ground, to connect with your to connect with your breath,
Right.
and be able to be present and grateful,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Well, that's part of the
Oh
principles.
yeah. So so let's hear more.
So grounding is G, I is intention.
Mhm.
And so every day I'd ask for, okay, what is the intention? What is my mantra? What is it that I'm going to hang on to? Because as you know, when you're in the middle of that, the midst of that tragedy and that trauma, right? We want to go into that fight or flight. We want to disassociate. We want to disengage. We want to numb. We want to do anything else but feel what's happening in the
Right,
moment.
right.
And so that intention for me was that whenever I was tempted to run, I'd
Mhm.
anchor myself back to
I love
whatever
it.
the word was for the day.
Yeah,
And sometimes it was just surrender.
yeah,
Sometimes it was just peace. Sometimes it was a phrase. Sometimes it was, a sentence of something that meant a lot to me. And so
right.
that was a really beautiful way to anchor in that
Yeah,
groundedness. And then V is for visualization and visualizing the best case scenario, right? Our minds don't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And so if I can sit and visualize, oh, Jacob's going to wake up and he's not going to have brain damage and he's going to, really
right,
get it this time and he's going to
right.
do amazing. And so I would just stay with that. And really
Mhm.
that's hope,
Right.
right?
And
And
I think it's also, and I know it's hard for some people listening or watching this might might think, well, how could you think that when all the reality or all the,
exactly.
everything is there in your face? And it's a really interesting thing, right? Because I like you, I tell people if they don't believe that the visualization is as if it's real for us, just think about how you feel when you wake up from a dream that has either been
Mhm.
a really good dream and you're whatever, turned on or excited or whatever it is, or a really bad dream where something really
Yeah,
tragic has happened. Your body is experiencing it as if it's real. It's the same thing with
ab-
visualization. And
absolutely.
I think, why not? Like,
Yeah.
why not envision the most beautiful outcome,
Yes, right.
right?
And you're right, people probably are looking at me like, well, that didn't really work out for you. Like, how are you doing that? And I've
Right.
done a lot of studies with people who were in concentration camps and who were in the Holocaust, and they studied the people that survived that. And that is the thing that they visualize coming home to their family and with their little kids greeting them at the door and their wife making dinner.
Mm.
And even though they
Oh,
knew in their rational mind that their whole
right.
family was killed, they stayed with that visualization. And
Oh,
that's what kept them alive.
body goosebumps
I
again.
know, me too.
Oh my gosh. And it makes me think of what was the name of that movie? A Beautiful Life? Is
Beautiful
that that?
life.
Oh,
Yes.
there's
My dog is
such
barking.
power. There's such power in our minds,
So
right?
powerful.
And so what would you say? So if someone said to you, okay, well, Judy, it didn't work out the way you visualize it didn't work out, what would you say to them?
Well, in that moment, that is what I needed to survive. Because what's the opposite of that? What would be the antithesis of that? Oh, I'm going to worry and look at the worst case scenario and then put my vibration in this place where I can't even be present to enjoy the little precious moments that I had.
Right.
Right. So for me, it was necessary and it was so powerful and magical. And sure, you can call me delusional if you want, but in that moment, that is what I needed to survive. And it
And
was
you,
beautiful.
and I, different experience, right? But I know that I have used that same path when one of my kids, for example, is going down their journey that is scaring me, right? Like I might notice that stuff that feels scary. I wish I could change that. I wish I could control that. Don't do that, do that, whatever it is really seeing them. And the way that I think about it is seeing them as this incredibly beautiful soul that is on this massive learning journey on this planet. And I have no effing idea what that journey is for them. So who am I to think that I'm so arrogant that I know what their journey is? And so for me, I go into that. I just envision the most beautiful. Wow, they're really learning. Wow, look at what they're so strong. They're so resilient. They're committed to putting themselves in situations that they're learning. What a beautiful soul and what a beautiful journey. Now, people could hear me and if they know what has been happening, it's like, what?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's what I needed. I think it's back to what you said, right? Like it's what you needed. And what good would it do if you were in the midst of the spiraling down and thinking worst case scenario?
Right. Right. Yeah. Wouldn't be able to be there for Jacob or the rest of my family
Right,
or all the people visiting and
right,
sharing in that moment with us. And so lastly, E is stands for expressing gratitude. So we already know there's a lot of science that supports that gratitude rewires the brain,
right.
but expressing that gratitude. So now you're putting that energy out. And so now you're
Mhm.
that it's contagious, right?
Yeah,
Like this energy, this positivity, this gratitude. And this is something that my husband is just so gifted in and it's so natural for him. He will encourage anybody around him at any time. Sometimes it's
mm.
annoying, like we're trying to leave, and it's like an hour later, and he's giving hugs and he's telling everybody how awesome they are, and
Hmm.
it's really beautiful that's his heart, But even at the hospital, I mean, he knew every specialist name, every nurse, every
Wow.
receptionist, every janitor, and he was asking them like, hey, how are you doing? What do you need anything? How can I support you? And everyone's looking at him like, you're in the ICU
Wow.
with your son on, fighting for his life. Like, how could
Right.
you be doing that? And one nurse in particular, I forget her name, but I remember she came up to us in tears and she says, you guys have brought light here. She says, the ICU is where death happens. We're
Yeah.
used to the darkness.
Right. Right.
And what you guys have done is you've brought light here. And I would host these meditation circles in the
Oh,
waiting
you
room
did?
with other families.
Mm.
And it was so when I say the name of the book, Beautiful Tragedy, it really
Yeah.
is that you
Yeah.
can find beauty in the tragedy. And I think as a possibility, if I maybe be so bold,
Be
is,
bold.
is that people don't get to that place because they want to run away from the pain.
Right. Right.
And when
It's
you
almost
run
like you have to
to the,
experience both, right? Like
yeah,
you can't have it's like I would imagine, and I mean, I don't just have to imagine, I know from experience, especially in the ICU or in the ER, and um tell me how to get over this so that I can have this, feeling wise. And it's like, guess what? It's both. And I
yeah.
think I think you're right. I had some really powerful conversations with people at the end of their life who didn't actually have family that were
Mm,
nearby. And I feel so honored, that I got to spend those last hours and days and minutes as some of these people, just that they could express what you just said so well. And they maybe had never experienced that in their whole life. But in this moment, they would say, something along the lines of just being able to be here and be me with you.
mm,
I feel so much love. I've never felt this much love. And not so much that I was loving them, but they felt their love, right?
yeah.
In a moment that we all are a little fearful of the end, our ending moments, or just recognizing and being grateful for what had been, what was a part of their life, people, or their own experiences, at the same time as just realizing, oh, wow, this time on this planet is over for me. Right.
Mm,
And it's that, I think what you were saying is being able to experience both.
yeah,
Or you said not being able to really get to that incredible love beauty without experiencing also that tragedy.
right, right. If you remember, in the book, I write the whole chapter of being around Jacob when he took his last breath, and Eric had his hand on his chest for his last heartbeat, and all the nurses were there, everyone's crying, and the nurses say, this is not everybody get to have this last moment.
Right.
And so again, looking at this as, of course, it's tragic, but it's beautiful that we got to be there for his very last breath together as a family,
Yeah.
holding him and just being together. And so
Oh,
powerful. It's so powerful.
more body chills. I so appreciate you sharing. I know you shared it in a book, and I know that, I know that it has been 5 years, and I also know that that can seem like yesterday at the same
Absolutely.
time. So I appreciate you sharing and bringing that bringing that energy that people can feel, and the hope,
Yeah.
even in the midst of tragedy, that there can be something beautiful, and there can be love, and there can be gratitude, and all of that as well. I want
Mm,
to ask you, as you think about now, so it has been 5 years,
yeah.
and what has been your relationship with Jacob since he passed from physical form?
Yeah. Oof, and this is going to sound probably strange to some people, but I feel closer to him now than I did when he was here. And there is such a deep connection, and he gives me so many signs, and he connects me with so many people. His birthday was 01/11/01, so January 11th, 2001. And so 1111 is like our magic number, and
Right,
he's always showing me 1111 signs in some form. Hearts are also a way that he shows himself to me, and so whenever I need it the most, a heart. I mean, I remember one time I was walking my dog and I was missing Jacob so much. And I was like, oh, just give me a sign, Jacob. And as I was walking my dog, and my dog peed in a heart shape.
no. Okay, that's a new one I have not heard before, Judy.
I have photos. I have evidence. I was in a
Oh my
yoga
gosh.
class. I was in a hot yoga class, and I was missing Jacob. And I look over, and the woman's shirt is had the heart sweat in the back of
Oh
her.
my gosh, that's so
So,
funny.
so I feel he's very close. He's very present, and he is a co-creator with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had many people come and share messages with me from Jacob saying um, that Jacob came for me, that he came, that his sole mission was to be here for me, and
Wow.
so that I can do the things that I was called to do. Because there's no way I would have been able to do the things that I've done in the last 5 years if
Right.
it wasn't for Jacob. Um, so it's very humbling to hear that. And even for his dad, with this documentary, Jacob's been very present in showing us, yes, you're on the right track. Thank
Mm.
you. And he just had the message for his generation of, you know, you're not alone. You can get through this, get help, get
Yeah.
open. You're not
Right.
weird. Nothing's wrong with you. You just need to allow people in, kind of back to what we were talking about in the very beginning of that
Right.
authenticity, of that soul connection. How can you sit with someone and truly just be with them, all of them, every part
Right.
of them,
Right.
and love them?
Mm. I love what you said about him being here for this generation, because there's a lot. My belief is the children coming in now, and up into his age range, I would certainly put my kids in their 20s and early 30s. Um, wow, empathic, and no idea. Even like you, like I did my best, right? I did my best, but these kids, no idea on how to manage that and feeling so alone and feeling so weird and feeling so much like, how do I fit in, and how do I manage everything that I'm feeling, right? And so I don't know much about what the intention of the documentary is, but I'm curious about two things. One, what is the intention of that documentary? Who is the audience? One, and two, are you thinking about a second book?
Great question. So we'll start with the first one. The intention of the documentary is there's three pillars to the documentary. One is having an open and honest conversation about mental health.
Thank you.
Mental health, and I would, include substance abuse in there,
Right.
right? Bringing resources that are maybe out of the box, out of, not that there's anything wrong with the Western medicine, but there are other
Yeah, let's
avenues.
open up. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that are seeing amazing results with the modalities that they're using for their patients. And so we have a panel of experts that are being interviewed as well, sharing, and it's powerful. Eric just came back from LA to do a filming, and they filmed this one, expert, and Eric said the whole production team was in tears. The cameraman,
Wow.
producers, everybody.
Wow.
It was just so
Powerful.
powerful.
Yeah.
And then bringing, launching Jacob's new music. So he left about, I don't know, maybe 300 songs or so that have never been
Wow.
that have never been released. And so, it's a gift to his fan base that still, love his music and want to know more. And it's educational and inspirational, and really having that conversation without the stigma, without the shame, without the judgment.
Right.
And how can we just be with it?
Be with what
all of
is.
it.
Be with
Yeah.
all of it.
Be
Yeah.
with all of it.
Thank you. Thank you. I
That's
look forward to that. And what about question number two?
question number two. I mean, if
And
I'm
the reason why I am asking you is, and we're just touching on what you're talking about, this relationship that you've had with Jacob since he passed, right?
right.
And we could go even longer and even deeper. Maybe we will at another moment. But what I kept hearing, I kept seeing a book, because just about that piece of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, it's not that they don't have access. It's almost like there's a belief blocking there. And and it's, for whatever reason, I'm one of those people who didn't believe in that. And then when my mom passed, she made darn sure
Yes.
that she was going to be the person or the soul who changed my belief, and she would not leave me alone. I mean, I was like, day after her funeral, I think I took a train ride just with I had a 6-month-old baby at the time, and it was just she and I, and we ended up, by accident, Judy, being the only people in the entire compartment.
Wow.
And my mom was right there, and we had a 3-hour long conversation about
Oh,
life. And so I just say that because for whatever reason, she wanted to make sure that I shifted, that I opened. But not everyone has that. And they have people who have passed who they're in love with, or even animals, or, whatever the scenario is. And I think there's so much more to explore in that. So that's the long
oh,
story as to why I asked you.
oh, that's beautiful. Hey, maybe you just inspired a new book. That wasn't the book that I was thinking, but gosh, there's definitely enough stories to write a whole book about it. And what's interesting in the work that I do, you're so absolutely right, is that people that have the belief or the desire or the intention of seeing a sign from their loved
Right.
one or having a communication, they will receive that, right? Like, even if you just look at it scientifically, your brain, its whole design is to find evidence for what you tell it. So if I believe I'm going to see stars or stars, hearts, that Jacob's speaking to me, I'm going to see hearts.
Right.
Is it true? Is it not? You want to, give me a reason why that's not true? I don't care, right? It's because it's my belief. That's what
Right.
I'm going to seek out what I'm looking
Right.
for. And other people that I know who I've given them messages from, other sources, and it's like right in your face, like, hey, this person is saying this to you. They want to give you a message. And they're like, nope, that's not true. I'm not hearing it.
Not
I'm not receiving
not
it.
the right time.
Yeah.
Right,
It just
right.
it's fascinating to me
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I also come from a very, in a box fundamental Christian background where anything outside of what fits in that box is not
Right.
not of God.
Right. Well, and I would say I came from that in the box of more of the educational research, where's the data type of
Mm-hmm.
box.
Yep.
And if there's no data to back it up, then you know what? Better develop a hypothesis and some sort of research plan to research it. And there were so many things that happened to me after my mom's death that my research brain could not put anywhere, that I finally just went, okay, bring it on.
Right. And
So
like you said, I think for people like us that may be a little bit stubborn, there had to be just this avalanche
massive, yeah.
of signs. And if I can just share this real quick, I
Yeah.
think this is important. Once I wrote my book, we were now in March of 2020. And if you remember what's happening during
Yep.
that time, absolutely nothing.
It was just a walk in the park.
we
Nothing
we were
happening.
all in timeout. And my editor and publisher were like, okay, you need to do one last run through of your book, and then it's going to launch. We're going to send it out. At that point, we had already pre-sold hundreds of books. People had already purchased, and they were just waiting for me for the green light. Well, that day in particular, I got up and I was filled with total fear. And I knew that if I press send, it's going out there. I can't take it back.
Right.
And so I just told my husband, I said, turn off the website. We're going to refund everyone's money. I'm not going to write the book. And I
Really?
was very like certain that this feeling, I'm like, I'm not doing it. And I went in the backyard and I just bawled my eyes out. And
Was it fear of putting it out into the public, or what?
it was fear, I think, because it's so vulnerable
Right,
that
right.
I was like,
You're
if
like,
I put this out there, I mean, it's like might as well go outside naked. I mean,
right,
that's
right,
kind of
right, right.
the feeling of this book. And so when I went in the backyard, I get a message from a woman, and all it says, hey, I have a friend who has a message to you from Jacob. Are you open to hearing it? And I didn't grow up in this kind of messages from the
Right,
other side kind
right.
of, thing. But I was open. I said, sure, I'll listen. And so this woman called me and she says, I have a message to you from Jacob. I don't know if this is going to make any sense to you, but he said he wants you to hurry up and finish because he wants his story to be told.
Body chills.
And that was Jacob's personality.
Yeah.
He's like, Mom, pee or get off the pot. Like he
Yeah,
was very
exactly.
much
Let's go.
like, let's go. And so I just
Oh my
knew that
gosh. Did
that
you
was
run
Jacob.
inside?
I did. I stayed up till 3 in the morning. I went through like the last edit and then sent it, and it was launched. And like I said before, it has saved many lives.
Wow.
Many kids have read the book and said, okay, I'm ready to get sober, went to
Mm,
rehab. They'll
mm,
message me every sober anniversary and say, thank you to you and your book. I'm still
mm.
sober, 4 years later.
Wow.
Um, so it
What
has
a
been
gift you put out there.
it's been a gift, and
Yeah.
something I'm so super proud of, because I know that it's the gift that's going to keep on giving
Right.
way beyond
Right.
when I'm gone.
Right. Oh,
And even now, it's 4 years later, and people are still sending it. I'm sad that people gift it to their friends who've lost
right.
kids, but
Right.
there's so
Right.
many. There's so
Right.
many.
Right. Oh, Judy, we could have a much longer conversation. And obviously I'm going to put the link to your book and other ways that everyone can connect with you in the
Mhm.
show notes. But I want to ask you, just tapping into who's here and listening now and in the future, if there's anything else you want to say to the audience that I haven't asked you about.
Mm. Whoever's listening, just a reminder that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, and it's all perfect, even if it feels like chaos. And if you're maybe in that midst of tragedy, that everything is for you. Everything is happening for you, not to you. A phrase that came to my husband, and he's actually also writing a book about it. It's steward your suffering well.
Mhm.
I think all of us, we're not
Mm.
going to leave here unscathed. We're all going to go
No.
through something. And what we do with that is really that beautiful tragedy, right? Like, how
Yeah.
can we create beauty out of the darkness that's going to be handed to us at some
Mm.
point? It's just such an honor to be here with you, to
Mm.
be here with your audience. And yeah, I'm a picture, a model of what is possible, that you can thrive after the worst imaginable thing a mother can go through, and that there is so much possible on the other side.
I love that so much, Judy. I feel so honored to have you here today and sharing with me and sharing with our audience. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world. And I hope that you all get value from this. Read the book and figure out how to look for the beauty in whatever challenges you're facing.
Thank you.